everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Constance, thank you for joining us.
Yes, good to be here.
So for anyone who doesn't know, Constance is an actor, producer, and author. She's best known for her work in the films Crazy Rich Asians and Hustlers, as well as the TV sitcom Fresh Off the Boat. I heard a woo.
That's my last name. Don't wear it out.
Her new book, Making a Scene, is an intimate and personal collection of essays, and it is out starting October 4th. So, Constance, let's start there.
Yes, sure.
So, as I understand it, this book started out really differently.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. In the acknowledgments, you write, and I'm going to quote you, that it was supposed to be a radical activist tome. So
Yeah.
how did it transform?
It really became what it finally was in the past few years, in the past 3 years. But I started writing it in 2016, around the time of the election. I think we were all feeling so many emotions around that. I was like, I have to put it somewhere. I have to say something. And then I would try to write something smart and fierce, and then I'd read it and I'd be like, this is crap. This is so bad. It's all over the place. But while I was writing, every once in a while, there'd be a little nugget of a personal story. Something as simple as how it feels to make bread. Your first car you had in high school, your first love. And then I was like, let me write about those things. And then it just flowed out of me, and I realized that was the book I needed to write, a personal book. Because in many ways, I think, especially now with, the way it feels like women's bodies are being governed, I almost think thinking of women as real human beings shouldn't be a political statement, but it almost has become that. So yeah, I think by writing a personal book, hopefully it's really just a more human book.
Yeah, I am curious, at the risk of over summarizing your book, you do cover, you cover a lot of sensitive subjects, and you talk about your time in Hollywood, how glamorous it can be and how grueling it can also be. And, well, you also touched on, working at a bakery, making bread. So when you looked back on the phases of your life and your career, what was the toughest time to revisit and process in writing?
The last essay I wrote, I was actually pretty resistant to write it, was the one about my experience on Fresh Off the Boat. And my publisher really encouraged me to write it, 'cause she was like, that's what people want to hear. And I was like, no, I'm done with that chapter in my life. And then I was like, okay, I'll write it as an exercise. And then I eventually realized it was important to talk about, because I did have a pretty traumatic experience my first couple of years on that show, and nobody knew about it because that show was historic for Asian Americans. And it was the only show on network television in over 20 years to star Asian Americans, and I did not want to sully the reputation of the one show we had representing us. And so therefore I kept my mouth shut for a really long time about a lot of sexual harassment and intimidation that I received the first 2 seasons of the show. Because after the first 2 seasons, once it was a success, once I was no longer scared of losing my job, that's when I was able to start saying no to the harassment, no to the intimidation from this particular producer. And so I thought, you know what? I handled it. Nobody has to know. I don't have to stain this Asian American producer's reputation. I don't have to stain the reputation of the show. But the thing is, bad feelings don't go away just because you will them to. They're inevitably going to come out somewhere. And then when the show was renewed, after they had told me it likely wouldn't be, I made some very profane, reckless tweets that sort of ignited this whole pile-on of hatred towards me, because I just had a hit movie, Crazy Rich Asians. So it looked really bad. From the outside, oh, she thinks she's this big movie star, when really it was just I wanted to have a fresh slate where I didn't have to start a show with all these memories of abuse. Because every day, because a lot of people knew it was, not a lot, a few people knew it was happening. And to go to work every day and see those people who knew that he was sexually harassing me, being buddy-buddy with him, it felt like a betrayal every time. sort of like have to see that at work every day. And of course, I don't blame them because he could fire them too, right? Everybody's looking out for their own job. But it felt like a betrayal. And so I loved everybody on that crew, and I loved working on that show, but it had that history of abuse that it started with. And even though I handled it after 2 years, I was looking forward to a clean slate. So I was a little bit, I feel like those tweets that came out were the emotions I suppressed, that I thought I could will away. Coming out in another way. And, you know, it negatively affected my career, but in many ways it positively affected me personally because it made me take a break from my career, made me go to therapy and understand it, and ultimately come out better because of it. Sorry.